All right, so we're back on the W.A.D.E concept presented by The Ring. And before we get into today's video, I want to let you guys know that I will be in London for Fatal Fury's The Clash of the Suns, a rivalry renewed. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. I'll be out in London. You guys will see me here, see me there. Some things I can't quite announce yet, but you guys don't want to miss that entire card. Stacked lineup from that main event that we all want to see. 70,000 people in Tottenham Stadium, all the way down the card, including my boy Vidal Riley looking for that British title versus Chef Clark. Don't miss out on that one. Don't miss out on the May 2nd card in Times Square. Your boy might be seen here or there as well. That's Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero. That's Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez. And that is Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza Jr. 3 fights, one night you do not want to miss, live from the Big Apple. And then the next day, Canelo tries to become undisputed once again at 168 pounds as he takes on William Skull in preparation for potentially the biggest fight of the year. Terrence Crawford, Canelo in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, but he's got to get that one done first. All brought to you by The Ring. Now, today's video, guys, I just spoke to you about the April 26th fight. Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn. The rivalry renewed for the sons fighting for the legacy of their fathers and themselves, quite frankly. But not everyone in this fight, or in the lineage and the legacy and the lore of this fight, is a willing participant. Yes, you have Chris Eubank Jr., you have Conor Benn, and you'll have Nigel Benn. Let's not forget, this was started with Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn, the fathers of the two fighters we'll see on Saturday. And while Nigel Benn will be in Conor Benn's corner, Chris Eubank Sr. will not be in Eubank Jr.'s corner. In fact, today's video, we're going to talk about him coming out and blasting this fight and why I think he's completely incorrect about it, but why I don't think it's just about this fight. I think, just like most things that we see in the public with Chris Eubank Sr. and Jr., something a little deeper there that, quite frankly, is sad to see, but needs to be acknowledged. What do I mean? The breakdown. Let's go.
Eamon Khan here for Seconds Out with the one and only Chris Eubank. Chris, great to see you. Michael Watson, MBE, the name, the inspiration. What does it mean to you on a fine day like this?
What it means to me is that if the rules are not adhered to, then you're going to effectively allow other fighters to lose their lives, their abilities to walk, talk, think, memorize, and effectively what's going on is a nonsense.
So this interview with Seconds Out he's doing, and shout out to them for being there and interviewing the great Chris Eubank. They're in Buckingham Palace somewhere, and Chris is at an event of some sorts for Michael Watson, Nick Blackwell. I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to speak out of turn. It looks like some sort of benefit that Chris is involved with. Obviously, Chris is the man on the other side of the equation from Michael Watson. If you don't know, they fought twice, and in the second fight, it was such a brutal war between him and Michael, and after that fight, I think they said Michael Watson spent 40 days in a coma and ended up having to have multiple brain surgeries, and obviously that has changed his life and affected him in ways I can't even imagine. And another fighter there, Nick Blackwell, who fought Chris Eubank Jr. and also suffered some life-changing consequences from that fight. So you're talking about two individuals that stepped into the boxing ring and paid the ultimate price, which kind of sets up what we're going to see here from Senior and how he is approaching this interview and many others to relate it to his son's fight coming up in just over a week now.
What happened to Michael will continue to happen as long as the rules are not adhered to. Shame on you, journalists. You are in positions of authority to actually steer the minds of the people correctly. These promoters have no care for boxing and the standards of boxing and the noble art that boxing is. No bad language, no hitting people with eggs and then actually promoting it. Is this what we are now? Is this what it's come to, man? Is this what we are?
I don't necessarily understand where Chris Eubank Sr. is coming from with this point, right? He talks about boxing being the noble art, and he's right. Yes, boxing is the sweet science. It is the Marcus of Queensberry. It has a legacy of being a gentleman's fighting sport, but at the same time, throughout the history of boxing, you had people that, presented themselves as sportsmen, like Chris Eubank Sr., but you also had people that presented themselves as monsters, as people that didn't play nice in the media or otherwise. Your Sonny Listons, your George Foremans, your Mike Tyson, and then you had your showmans, your Prince Naseems, and again, speaking of showmans, Chris Eubank Sr., but the idea that boxing is a noble art and that it can only be promoted as such. I just have to push back a little bit and say I disagree, because everybody is an individual in combat sports. There are no teams, and the individuals are what make the sport. As much as you can call it degeneracy, and in some cases, sure, there is, but that's also a part of why you watch, because not every boxer is a representation of the highest order of proper sportsmen. Some people come from rough backgrounds, like Chris Eubank Sr. did, and can't shake those rough backgrounds inside of them. Some people are just hard individuals that came through a tough sport, and that molded them into, again, a monster in there. Mike Tyson is one of them. And throughout history, you've just had different characters. I think it's what makes the sport of boxing great. You don't have to agree that slapping someone with an egg is the right thing to do. And in retrospect, was it a little silly? Yeah. Could it have gone to a place that we don't want to see in fight buildup with Eubank Jr. and Ben? For sure. Luckily, it didn't, and it did create a lot of attention, which, rightfully or wrongfully, is what boxing needs right now. And I'm not saying that that's the way to do it, but I am saying the attention of the public, the thing that boxing at its core is supposed to be, entertainment sport, where people have a reason to watch two men go at it. And again, there's no belt on the line in this Eubank Jr. and Conor Ben matchup, yet there's 70,000 people in the stands. Yes, because of the fathers, but also because of the sons and the way they genuinely react to each other, the way they genuinely talk to each other. Yes, that means a little bit of foul language, because Eubank Sr. might not agree with it, but not everybody speaks with the eloquence he does. And they use curse words. Maybe it's just the degenerate age we live in, but Ryan Garcia last year in the Devin Haney buildup was doing everything and saying everything under the sun, and it somehow gained him more fame. So I can agree with him that there's a line, and maybe we've even crossed it when it comes to how we promote fights or how fighters act or are seen in some cases. But at the end of the day, this is the hurt business, where words and actions collide with two men fighting. This isn't soccer. It's not tennis. It's not basketball or even football. This is fighting. And all the stunts pulled, you cannot lie when you enter the squared circle. And Chris Eubank Sr. knows that more than anyone. So act as if everyone's going to be as respected and respectable as he was is just unrealistic to me. But I love the goal he's striving for. I'll get on board with him. It's just not everyone's going to be that, and you can't really have everyone be that.
If you don't want your children to become morons, then stand by and don't say anything with all this nonsense that's going on. Boxing is about rules, and it's about being noble. No bad language. Conor Ben, you swear like a possessed drunk. You're supposed to be in Christ.
I mean, yeah, he's not wrong, though. There's a lot of people, and listen, I probably have fallen victim to this as well. A lot of people claim faith in their lives, but at the first moment of some sort of pushback, the curses come flying out of the mouth, like anytime there's a little bit of anger in your heart, no matter how many, tattoos of a cross you have or how many Jesus pieces you wear, if you're coming out and going crazy with the curse words, you probably need to reevaluate a bit. He's right. I mean, Eubank Sr.'s right about that. But again, no foul words have ever hurt anybody as much as a right hook or an uppercut. And no matter how nice or sportsmanlike you are, you're still looking to go in there and hurt another individual. Some people wear their emotions on their sleeve. Conor Ben and Nigel Ben being two of the poster boys for that.
I do not believe that you did anything to do with drugs. I think you were set up. But now with this language that's coming out of you, it is said, it's not what goes inside of you that defiles you, it's what comes out of your mouth. And your language is deplorable. Where is it gone? Where is the Christ personality gone? Someone's taken you over. Who's got you binded down into this? Who's destroyed your career? Destroyed it.
The drugs, accusations, and the exaggerations, potentially, are what have, I think what he's talking about, destroyed his career, or what have frustrated Conor and kept him out of the sport. And potentially this fight with Chris Eubank Jr., if you're asking who has gotten him all riled up, it'd be your son, Senior. That would be who's riling him up and causing him to have these, fits of anger. And I mean, listen, Senior's not saying anything there that's not true, right? If you're going to be a representative of a certain religion or a walk of life or a faith, and you're going out on TV and using bad language and breaking the tenets of certain faiths, then yeah, okay, that's a bad thing. That's very hypocritical to do, and it's very rude and everything else. I don't really know, again, if that really makes the sport look bad. I can remember watching old black and white footage of Sonny Liston pulling a pop gun out on Muhammad Ali and acting like he was going to shoot him with it in the middle of a casino on camera after Ali just kept hounding him and followed him everywhere and was really trying to promote their fight. Sonny Liston had enough and pulled it out and did it. I don't even know if we can show it on YouTube, but things like that were happening back then. Mike Tyson, when he was yelling at reporters and going after people and going after other fighters like he did Lennox Lewis in their press conferences. Like, again, I just go back to this. As much as Eubank Sr. says this is a noble art, it is inside that squared circle. It is a noble art. But fighters are some of the most emotionally driven, impulsive people on the planet, and they always have been. Just because Eubank Sr. himself isn't and represented himself in a way that is very respectable, and I always will respect, to me doesn't mean that everyone has to do that. For every good guy, there's a bad guy. For every hero, there's a villain. For every Eubank Sr., there's a Nigel Benn. For every Eubank Jr., there's a Conor Benn. For every De La Hoya, there's a Mayorga. There is always going to be some controversy when it comes to fighters that we care about and why we care about them. So again, I can understand where Senior's coming from, and I respect his points of view here for sure. And I'm in no position to question his beliefs on the sport of boxing. He's forgotten and knows more than I ever will. But I just don't agree.
If you've had 3 fights in 3 years, same with you, Junior. If you've had 3 fights in 3 years, what happened to you guys? There are no standard bearers to steer you correctly.
Kind of cooking here. I'm not gonna lie, he's kind of cooking here again. Senior's right about the activity level, especially for a young guy in Conor Benn. Not necessarily all up to him with the whole accusations and allegations of PEDs and everything over the last couple, but yeah, man, your career is not gonna go well if you are not active early on, and you can taper that off as you get older. Which is why I think, maybe for the Eubank Jr., it's not necessarily as accurate now. But yeah, Conor Benn needs to be fighting. If he says he wants to be a world champ and all this other stuff, he's got to be active. 3 in 3 years, not going to cut it if you're ever going to make it to world level. It's just not.
Chris, just before you go, I've got a question for you. It's a serious question because you're talking about media and journalists not doing their job. I've been speaking to journalists and speaking to people in the media and trying to talk about this fight and shine a light on it. I spoke to British Boxing Hall of Fame trainer Joe Gallagher, and he said to me, Just hear this out, Chris. Just hear it out. He said, "Who is going to be there if Eubank Jr. isn't making the weight safely? Who will pull him out? Who will pull him out of the fight? Are you confident that someone will be there to make sure that Eubank Jr. is safe?" That's what I wanted to ask you. Can I ask that again?
Good. I forgot my man's name here. He's interviewed me a couple times with Seconds Out. Eamon. Shout out to Eamon, man, because that right there is a moment where Eubank Sr. did not. He was very flustered by whatever he deems as just disrespectful, disgrace, like the whole stuff. You can see it. Like the emotion is building up in him. He's just speaking about his son's fight with Conor Benn, and he was about to walk off. And good on Eamon to ask a question that, quite frankly, is a fair one about the cutting of weight here for Chris Eubank. It's been a big deal as far as the first fight was concerned when they were supposed to do it at 157. Now it's at 160 with the rehydration. It's a fair question to ask, and I think this is probably where we'll get Senior's, actual ideas on the rules and what he deems is the wrong thing to be doing.
The answer is the fight won't happen. I am so confident.
Okay.
If this goes ahead, the rules are trashed, and our nation effectively are a bunch of morons. Come back at me. Tell me whether I'm wrong, or tell me to get off of my high horse and actually get on board. Who's going to tell me to get on board in their right minds? If I'm the one person, and it seems like I'm the one person saying, hold on a minute, guys, you're all going the wrong way.
So again, I had a feeling this is what it was. Eubank Sr. says he don't think this fight's happening, and I have to assume in his mind he thinks it's because Chris Eubank won't make the weight, or at least won't make the rehydration. I'm not exactly sure what he believes, but in no way, shape, or form is this breaking the rules. It may not be something that Eubank Sr. agrees with, that Chris Eubank shouldn't be fighting at 160, even though Eubank Jr. has fought at 160 at least 3 or 4 of his last fights. The rehydration clause, I completely understand, is not beneficial for Eubank Jr., and I'm not going to sit here and act like it's a good thing for his health to be in a rehydration clause like that. It's not. He's acknowledged it's not. We all know it's not. But these are the things that he's agreed to do for the money he's being paid, and another thing we can't do is act like rehydration clauses or fighters cutting more weight or moving up or down in weight is something new to boxing. I mean, hell, Senior did it himself. He bounced around from 175 to 157 to 160 to 167 to 168 back down to 1. He moved around a lot of different times, but again, those are maybe without rehydration. I understand that. The point I'm making is they are adhering to the rules of boxing. You can say that the fight doesn't make sense because they're a little bit further away in weight. And again, Sr. would be also someone that did that. You could say that about Terrence Crawford and Canelo, but one man is accepting that challenge to come up. And this, again, no rehydration on Canelo at 168, but the point I guess I'm making is these two men have agreed to this catch weight. These two men have agreed to come together at a specific weight, and both have said, I can make it, coming down and going up, by the way. For Conor Benn, who's never fought at 160. Does it make for the best performances from either guy? We'll see on the night. I have no idea. But I do see Senior's point, and honestly, this just looks like a father that's distraught over, a relationship with his son where potentially the lack of communication is the reason he does this in public. I don't know. But you can see that there's vitriol and there's real emotion behind either the fact that Junior is doing this or the fact that him and Senior aren't talking, so Senior doesn't have the line of communication he wants with his son. Regardless, you can understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, I don't know what I would tell him. The sport of boxing is always operated this way. Rehydration clauses may be a little bit of a different thing, and again, not something I'm a fan of at all, cutting weight in general, but this isn't something new to the sport.
The corner, for some reason, they're calling for you to be in the corner. Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom saying, why aren't you with Eubank Jr.? Why aren't you part of the fight week activities? Why aren't you in the corner?
Because I will not be an accomplice to their stupidity, to their circus. It's against the rules, what's happening is against the rules. 147 fighting 160 is against the rules. When Kell Brook was made to fight GGG, it's against the rules. That boy had his eye socket smashed. This is what happens. The promoters, to them, it's just a game. But to the warriors, it's a way of life.
This I can completely understand. This is where the against the rules comment comes from, that he believes 160 versus 147 shouldn't be happening. What he means is Conor Benn has never fought at 160. Chris Eubank Jr. has, but with the rehydration, it's not truly what he usually weighs fighting 160. But jumping weight classes has been something that boxers have done for forever now, and Conor Benn coming up to 160, something we really haven't even talked about, but that's potentially a big issue for him as well. Not just the weight cutting of Chris Eubank Jr., but the fact that Conor Benn is going to come in and fight a far bigger, far stronger guy. This I can understand the frustrations of Chris Eubank Sr., but again, we're talking about willing participants. We're talking about men that have signed on the dotted line, that plan to, and I think will, make the weight for an event like no other in the modern era. So again, I just don't think you can call it a circus. Even with no belts being on the line, even with the weights being different, it is a bit of a different matchup. And yes, repercussions will be on the line anytime any fighter steps into the ring. But again, I think this one hits a little closer to home for Senior, not just because Junior's in the fight. It's clear he cares for Conor Benn as well, and because he cares for the sport of boxing. You can see it. You can see the passion in his face, which is why, again, he is so passionate about this whole thing. And I love that we do have a dissenting opinion out there. Like everybody, myself included, wants to see this fight. It is a bit odd that the father and one half of the beginning of this great rivalry through the family doesn't want to be involved, but his reasons why are not crazy ones. So fair play to Senior for at least having the courage to speak on whatever it is he feels when most boxers won't.
And we have to call them what they are. They are trash. They're trashing us. We are not trash. We are the standard bearers.
Okay, well, I don't agree with that. I agree with the boxers and the being the standard bearers and warriors. I don't think that anyone is trying to trash either Conor Benn or Chris Eubank Jr. in this fight. Sure, there's a lot of money to be made for promoters, but also for the fighters. Again, I'm talking about a $10 million person. Money is not everything, but again, willing participants in a fight. I don't see anybody being trashed by anybody here or taken advantage of by anybody here, because these are two adults, two fighters that understand the risk involved and understand what it is that they're about to go and do.
If the rules are abided by, then we don't have to talk about rehydration clauses, which actually kills fighters and puts them in the position that Michael Watson is in. Barry, you know about that. So I see my son. I see the mistakes that he's walking into, only looking at the money. The money will get you killed. If you're not clever and if you're not noble, this will kill you, this vocation, what they call sport.
This is where we get down to the heart of what Chris Eubank Sr. was talking about. And this is where it hits home, even as a viewer, that he does have some credence to what he says, and he's not just being a hater or just being someone that is looking to hate on his son's success because of the spotlight issue, and those things may be real, like the rumors of Senior potentially wanting to be in the spotlight more and not being able to share that with Junior. Okay, that's fine. Maybe that's a part of the story, but it isn't in this case. And while I'll disagree that the fight's a disgrace and that this fight is trash or the promoters are trash, like, I don't believe that at all. I believe that everybody involved with this fight is doing what they think is the best for these two that want to fight each other and trying to get them the most money possible, putting on a massive event for it. No one's forcing these two to fight each other, but you have to see where he's coming from, because yes, that's something I didn't know about the weight issues that Michael Watson and himself had to go through for the first super middleweight championship. And he's obviously speaking to Barry Hearn there, because Eddie is the one on the side of Conor Benn who has enforced this rehydration clause in the contract for Chris Eubank Jr. And yes, this is the crescendo of everything we were kind of talking about and why boxing doesn't have as big an issue with it, but it still is pretty prevalent. You saw this with Devin Haney. You've seen it with other fighters that they try, and not necessarily with Chris Eubank Jr. because the weight is the weight that they were going to fight at. It's more so the rehydration of the weight. But when you try to make a weight that is foreign to what your body performs optimally at, just to then rehydrate and try to gain back all the stuff you've depleted your body of. Then on top of that, you have a clause that says you can only rehydrate a couple of pounds more. It is a brutal way to enter a fight, because the last thing you want is for a fighter to be compromised, entering the sport that can damage you worse than any other. So I'm not going to sit here and act like Senior is crazy for saying that. He has every right, and quite frankly, he has great points about rehydration clauses, and I hope that one day in this sport we don't have those. But regardless, only thing I can say, and why I can't get on board with the whole this is a disgrace and everybody is bad for doing, I disagree, because again, this event is only agreed to. This fight is only being put on. This thing is being sanctioned at a catchweight only because two men wanted to fight each other. At 157, now at 160, and it's your son, Chris Eubank Jr., and it's Conor Benn. Without them saying yes, without them actively pursuing this fight, even after the drug allegations and the fights that Chris Eubank Jr. took after that, to then come back around to this one. Yes, there's tons of money involved, but regardless their reasons for it, they're the men that said yes, and everything else is built around that yes. So I can't see the argument for anybody taking advantage of those two, because this fight started and ended with those two. This is a fight that they wanted for their own legacy.
Junior, you're smashing an egg against this guy's face. I taught you that. I didn't teach you that. Who taught you that? Did Karen teach you that? Who taught you that? That's disgraceful. I'm gonna stand in your corner. You must be mad. You must be mad. I would never be in your corner. You're a disgrace. You're smashing an egg in someone's face, and then you're trying to justify it. There's no justification for that. There's nothing noble about that. Seconds out. You're welcome.
So yeah, this clip, that last part was on Twitter, and bunch of people posted everywhere, and people really jumped on Chris Eubank Sr. for that last little clip there about how he spoke to his son. And I think a lot of people that aren't in the boxing realm got a hold of it and were like, how could a father speak to his son this way? It's pretty clear that there's no communication between Senior and Junior privately, and that's very unfortunate, because I think they both desperately need to speak privately. But when I look at that last clip and how he calls Junior disgraceful, how he calls the action of the egg disgraceful, it does feel like a father that has lost grips with the advice he wants to give to his son, with the relationship he had with his son potentially at one point. And I think there's another interview where Senior says he just won't listen to me. He will not listen. And because as much as Senior and Junior are alike, they are also different. And I don't know that Senior is okay with that. The messaging from Senior here was pretty much a cautionary tale of what can happen due to the dangers of weight cutting and rehydration clauses, which again is a perfectly acceptable and honestly an honorable thing to say. And so it's not something I'm going to sit up here and be like, how could you say that? The publicly going after his son in front of the media and then ending it with the seconds out, you're welcome kind of tagline does feel a bit performative from Senior there, but the man operates on raw emotion in those moments. So I don't know. And I just guess I wish that there was a better outlet for both him and Junior. It's clear he doesn't want anything to do with this fight. He doesn't want to be in the corner for it. And I also think that's very sad, because what a moment it would be for him and his son. Whatever Senior says here, and again, respect to his opinions on sport of boxing and everything else, I completely disagree that this fight is a disgrace. I completely disagree that his son is a disgrace or that Conor Benn is. I think that there is some nobility in fighting for their legacy, for their family, regardless of the bad words used or the eggs across the face. Yeah, there's a little bit of gamesmanship here. And no, Chris Eubank Sr. didn't go that far, but he was a gamesman as well. He calls boxing the noble art, and I tend to agree with him, but the nobility isn't in the words used or the jumping of weight classes. It is the bravery to fight for what is considered your father's legacy and their legacy behind them, which is why when I think about this fight, it does give me goosebumps, and that I genuinely don't know who wins between Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. All I can say is I respect the man. I respect his feelings on the situation, and I genuinely can't say anything other than that because I don't have his experiences. I don't have his expertise, but I hope for the best for him. And if there is any way for him and Junior to reconcile, I hope it happens. But like I said, I am jacked. I'm juiced for this fight, and the responsibility I have is to be honest with you guys at every turn I can in this boxing game. And I honestly do think this will be one of the biggest fights in UK boxing history. And I think that regardless of who wins, this is a night none of us will ever forget. So make sure you guys tune in at DAZN.com. You can use my code. It's in the description below to check out not only those fights, but May 2nd's Fatal Fury card in Times Square and May 3rd, Canelo Alvarez versus William Skull. And while you're down there, let me know what you guys think about Senior's comments. Is he off base here? Did he go a little too far out in the public once again? Seems like the only medium that him and Eubank Jr. can communicate through. Go too far? Is he right on the money with what he said? I don't have those answers, but on April 26th, both sons will walk in there, and only one will exit the victor. Who will carry on the legacy of their fathers, like it or not? Don't have those answers, but I guess we'll find out.